Good evening, everyone. For those who are standing, there's more seats down here if you'd like a seat.
Bill, we'll be coming down.
Okay. All right, but there's still seats behind you. There's a lot of seats if anyone wants a seat. Okay. My name is Bill Finnegan. I'm the solicitor for the city of Nanticoke, and I'll be conducting tonight's hearing. Before we begin the hearing, I'm going to just basically give an overview of what's going to transpire so everyone understands how these types of hearings unfold. First of all, Shannon Clory, our zoning officer, will explain the requests that we've received before council and why it's before council. These typically don't come to council, but there's specific reasons why this had to come to council, and she'll explain that. I expect she's going to produce some exhibits to explain why we're here tonight. And then our engineer, Don Totino, is here. He's going to give a brief presentation as well on the environmental submission that was made. After they're done, the applicant, through their counsel, Attorney Fox, will give their presentation. And once their presentation is done, everyone who wants to speak, we did do a sign-in sheet. Some people indicated they wanted to speak. Some indicated that they just wanted to be here and to listen, and that they might want to speak later. Whoever wants to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. The only thing I would ask is, as you're called up, please ask your questions first of the applicant, and then if you have any comments that you want to make, you can do that as well. If there's any exhibits that you intend to introduce, you should do that as well. Somebody handed me a petition. If you have a spokesperson or someone who got this petition together, I suggest that you put that in as an exhibit when you come in instead of just handing it to me, so that it can be part of the record. We have a stenographer here today. Her name is Kim. She will be taking down everything that's said here today. It's very important, in order to make this hearing go smoothly, that people wait until the other person is done speaking. She can only take down one person at a time. And if you start talking over each other, it's going to cause delays, because I'm going to stop the hearing and we're going to get on pace where she can take down one person speaking at a time. We're going to go till approximately 8 o'clock, and we'll take a break, mainly so Kim can take a break and we can see where we're at in the process, how many more people we have to speak. If there are a lot more people who still want to speak, we'll consider how far we're going to go tonight. It is not our intent to stay here till midnight. We'll stay here for a reasonable period of time until our stenographer tires out. And if we have to reconvene to finish taking testimony from people, we'll do that. I don't know if that will be the case. We'll see. When the public is done asking their questions, council will have an opportunity to ask any questions that they have, and then we'll go from there. There will be no decision made on this application tonight. Even if we finish the hearing tonight, there will not be a decision on this. The decision will take place at a subsequent meeting. That meeting will be announced either tonight, depending upon where we're at in the hearing process, or it will be advertised. But there will not be a decision tonight, just so everyone's aware of that. That's it for the preliminary instructions. So Shannon, we'll hear from you first. If you could please state your name and spell it for the stenographer, Shannon.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Calouri. That's S-H-A-N-N-O-N. Calouri, C-A-L-L-U-O-R-I.
And Shannon, you're going to be sworn in first before you start.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. Okay, good evening. Just a quick summary of the application in front of you tonight. So this project is for a solar energy generation facility. A solar energy generation facility is not listed as a use in our current zoning ordinance. Therefore, per the ordinance, it's reviewed as a special exception use. And special exception uses are reviewed by the zoning hearing board. However, the City of Nanticoke zoning ordinance also says that if a use has an earth disturbance that is greater than 40,000 square feet, then it becomes a conditional use. And a conditional use is heard by City Council with a recommendation by the Planning Commission. This project will exceed 40,000 square feet in earth disturbance. Therefore, we are here tonight because this project will be reviewed as a conditional use in front of City Council. This project is located in the R1 Single Family Residential Zoning District. There's a small piece, there's two parcels involved. One of the parcels has a small piece in the industrial district, but the Nanticoke zoning ordinance says that if more than 75% of a parcel is in one zoning district, then the entire project is reviewed for that district. So the one parcel that has a little bit in the industrial zoning district, more than 75% of it is in the residential or the R1 zoning district. So both parcels are considered in the R1 zoning district for consideration of this use. The Planning Commission reviewed the application at their June 11th Planning Commission meeting, and they submitted a letter to City Council with a recommendation of the project with conditions. I have a number of exhibits that I want to submit. Attorney Finnegan also has a copy of these. So C1 or City 1 is the letter from Bowler Engineering that identifies a number of application documents. C2 is the actual zoning permit application. C3 is a summary of the project where it talks about the project needing conditional use approval for the reasons I just stated. C4 is a copy of the site plan. C5 is a copy of the environmental impact statement. C6 is the proof of publication. We're required to publish this in the newspaper, so we published it in the Citizen's Voice, so it's a proof of publication. We're also required to send letters to neighboring property owners. So C7 is an affidavit of mailing with the public notice and a list of the property owners that received the mailing. And then C8 is a copy of the Planning Commission letter to City Council. And that's all I have. It's kind of fit again. Do you have anything for me?
Any objection to the introduction of these exhibits? They're admitted then, C1 through C8. Thank you, Shannon. Is that all you have?
Yes.
Before we proceed, Shannon did reference the Planning Commission recommendation. And I'm going to read that recommendation. I know that some people have picked up a copy of this, but for those who haven't, I want you to know what their recommendation is and what conditions they've set forth, because some of these may be questions that residents have. So this was directed to the Nanticoke council members and to myself. This was sent by Attorney Mark McNeilis, the solicitor for the Nanticoke City Planning Commission. And the June 24, 2024 recommendation reads as follows. I am providing this correspondence on behalf of and in my capacity as solicitor to the Nanticoke City Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has authorized me to forward this correspondence constituting the Planning Commission's recommendations in connection with the above referenced conditional use request. More specifically, and as I believe all are aware, Susquehanna Solar LLC has proposed to develop a solar panel facility on approximately 40.84 acres of property located in the city, and more specifically identified above and in the company's submissions. The Planning Commission conducted a public meeting regarding the application on Tuesday, June 11, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. at the Nanticoke City Municipal Building. At that time, the applicant and the applicant's engineering consultant and legal counsel presented the Planning Commission with an overview of their proposal and answered Planning Commission's inquiries and requests for clarification in connection with the project. Please note that no area property owners appeared before the Planning Commission to provide input on the application. However, the coming council meeting will be advertised and noticed, and public comment is likely to arise or be heard by council when it conducts its conditional use hearing on the application. In the meantime, the Planning Commission has recommended that council consider approval of the proposal, but subject to and conditioned upon series of stipulations and conditions. The following are potential conditions discussed by the Planning Commission as matters which should be considered by council in making its determination on the conditional use application. Number one, any approval should be expressly contingent upon the applicant's receipt of land development approval from the Nanticoke City Planning Commission, and also any and all other permits, approvals, or consents required by any governmental or quasi-governmental entity, including but not limited to the City of Nanticoke, having jurisdiction over any facet of the project. Two, the Planning Commission believes that the solar facility, if approved, should be subject to setbacks with screening sufficient to block any area residential property's view of the solar facility. Three, the applicant should be required to provide the city with security for the removal and disposal of the solar panels at the end of the panel's useful lifetime. Furthermore, security should be provided for any roadway or other damages which may occur during the company's construction phase of the project. Four, the applicant should be required to provide a maintenance schedule for the solar facility site so as to ensure the site is maintained and does not create an eyesore or otherwise unsightly appearance. Finally, the Planning Commission would urge council to give due consideration to any objections, complaints, or suggestions of any area property owners appearing at the conditional use hearing, if any. On behalf of the Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to review and to provide council with thoughts and suggestions in the form of this recommendation. And Attorney Fox, you've been provided a copy of that finding as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And will you be touching on these points at the hearing tonight?
I will. We've also introduced it as an exhibit in our exhibit package as well.
Okay, very good. Okay, with that being said, that's the city exhibits. Mr. Totino is next. Don Totino's the city engineer. He has received an environmental submission from the solar farm, which he's going to just briefly discuss. Don, will you please state your full name and spell it for the reporter and be sworn in?
Donald Totino, Donald Totino.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes. As a part of the land development process, it has to go to planning. So what happens is, as a requirement of the proposal, they had to provide an environmental impact study. The environmental impact study goes over soil types, existing topography, surface waters to the Commonwealth, ground cover, the water supply, sewer, air quality, and noise. That's all we're looking at. And what we wanted to do was make sure that anything that is required as a part of the ordinance is met. There were a couple questions we did have during the Planning Commission meetings. I reached out to their engineer. He expressed that they did have some of the documentation we were looking for. He produced it. We were okay with that. We had no issues, no problems with the document itself. This will still have to go through all land development. It's going to have to cover stormwater. It's going to have to cover any kind of land development, ground cover, earth disturbance, state permits, DEP permits, anything like that. That's required if the conditional hearing grants the project. From there, we provided a letter and we discussed it with the Planning Commission that we had no issues regarding the environmental impact study. Everything that was provided was accurate and correct. That's pretty much what we did.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Attorney Fox, are you ready to proceed?
I am.
If you could identify yourself for the record and just spell it for the reporter, but I assume Fox is FOX.
FOX, yes. Nate Fox from Obermeyer, Applicants Counsel. And I'll be having two witnesses this evening, John Wadsworth, Chief of Operations for Susquehanna Solar, and Justin Klee of Bowler Engineering. If I may have them sworn in as a matter of
Yeah, if you
housekeeping?
could spell their names first for Kim, and then let's have them sworn in.
Sure. John Wadsworth.
JONWADSWORTH.
Justin Klee, JUSTIN KLEE.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Kristen, what's your last name again?
Klee, KLEE.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with apologies to everyone, I'm unable to get my laptop to communicate with the projector. So we have a set of boards down here and a duplicate set up top.
Excuse me, could you speak up? We can't hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So as you heard, we're here for a conditional use. So within the zoning ordinance, as was explained, why we're here for a conditional use, Section 704 of the ordinance requires several things for a conditional use. One, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which will provide testimony that it is. It will not burden public services, facilities such as streets, sewers, water, police, or fire protection. Will have adequate access to the site regarding the width and pavement for emergency service vehicles. Will not adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare due to changes in traffic conditions. It is compatible with adjoining development and the character of the zoning district and neighborhood in which it is proposed to be located. It will not adversely affect the neighborhood property values and aesthetic characteristics in the neighborhood where it is proposed.
Swear in there.
All right,
He wasn't sworn in.
proceed.
Make it unsellable.
He doesn't have to be sworn in, he's their attorney.
So it will not adversely affect the public health, safety, welfare as related to drainage, air quality, noise, and natural features of the land. It will not be injurious to the public interest. It will meet all of the technical standards as set forth in the testimony by our engineer from Bowler and from the consistent with the environmental impact statement dated April 23rd, 2024. Additionally, this will comply with the recommendations of the Planning Commission. The project, as you see on the plans, is a solar facility. Solar is one of the only truly passive uses of land. Once it's installed, that's it. There's minimal maintenance, there's minimal traffic, if any, and the buffering will grow taller than anything that is on site. Doesn't make any appreciable noise, doesn't cause anything that homes or other permitted uses would otherwise do on the property. It generates additional tax revenue than would otherwise be provided from either vacant ground or an otherwise more impactful use, while not causing any of the burdens that a typical use would. You'll hear testimony from John Wadsworth explaining the project and the operations thereof. You'll hear testimony from our engineer, Justin Klee, regarding the plans, features, and resources on the property and the technical requirements for the conditional use. And to the extent certain requirements cannot be satisfied prior to construction, which are more land development requirements, all of these will be covered during the land development process because this is zoning only. The conditional use to otherwise permitted use provided we meet the conditions of the ordinance. And we will do that this evening by way of the testimony and exhibits. I've provided an exhibit package to the board, and I'll cover that for the record if you don't mind. It's a 7-tab exhibit. Exhibit A1 is the conditional use application. Exhibit A2 is the zoning plan prepared by Bowler Engineering dated April 6, 2024. Exhibit A3 is the environmental impact statement prepared by Bowler Engineering dated April 23rd, 2024. Exhibit A4 is a redacted copy of an agreement of sale in favor of my client to show standing. Exhibit A5 is the affidavit of posting with pictures of the posting. Exhibit A6 is the recommendation of Planning Commission dated June 24, 2024. And Exhibit A7 are the specification sheets for the Q-cell solar panels, which are intended to be used here, which are U.S. manufactured panels, and explain that there are no hazardous chemicals or substances or otherwise any other environmental risks. If I may, unless there are questions from the council, I'd like to begin my witness testimony.
No, those exhibits will be received.
Great, thank you.
Council, is the same thing proposing up front to be on here, or do we, council need to come down here for the?
So everything is in the package or referred to. Unfortunately, I'm unable to get my laptop to communicate with the projector, with apologies.
So council can stay up here then?
Council can stay up here, and I'll reference throughout the presentation what we're speaking of. All right, without any further, I'll call John Wadsworth.
Do you want me there or here? I'm
Th
loud.
There's okay. If you're louder than me, check if everybody can hear you.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Use the microphone, please. Yeah.
Is there an additional mic we can share?
That's
I don't know if I have a place to put it. I'll come over.
You want to come over and join me?
We'll share.
So, John, please tell everyone your full name and position with Susquehanna Solar.
My name is John Wadsworth, and I'm the Director of Operations for Susquehanna Solar.
And can you generally describe the business of Susquehanna Solar?
Susquehanna Solar is in the business of building and developing solar energy facilities for operation in the state of Pennsylvania.
And you heard me say that the applicant has a valid agreement of sale. Is that correct?
We do.
And Susquehanna Solar is unique from other solar companies in that you purchase the ground rather than lease it. Is that correct?
I don't want to say that's unique. Most of the other persons that are doing solar will lease the property. And that's important because by owning it, we have a lot more ownership in the property, and it will also trigger a change in taxes. And we will be responsible for any taxes. If it comes out of clean and green or anything else, it will be re-tax assessed at its new value.
And there's no grants or public funding involved with your company, correct?
Let me say that very clearly. We are not using federal or state or other incentives to build this facility.
And you are familiar with the property?
I am.
Can you generally describe the property and neighborhood?
The property it has low growth on it, so not tall, mature trees. It appears at one point it was.
Excuse me, everyone will have an opportunity to be heard. Please let the person speak.
In general, the property has low growth. You all will have an opportunity to speak. Please let me do it now under testimony. It is close to a neighborhood. There are a couple of streets which it adjoins and a large street. A portion of the property is in an industrial section, and this will go between the industrial section, the artery road, and the two neighborhoods really that it adjoins.
Is the property bisected by any utilities?
It is. Right down the middle of the property is a very large power line.
And that's ideal for interconnection purposes for a solar facility?
It is.
So is it fair to say that a solar facility in this location would be less impactful than elsewhere because there are less needs for interconnection apparatus to go off the property?
Very true.
And what, roughly speaking, is the interconnection from the facility to the transmission lines?
The interconnection could be a substation, it could be a transformer, or it could be a line to go to the power lines.
And all of that is contained within the fence line of the solar facility?
Correct.
And the public utility is the one who dictates the actual where and how that happens, correct?
Correct. That is not our decision. That is the local utility. We've just made it very easy for them with the power line inside the property.
And as far as the interconnection process, before you can apply for interconnection to the utility, we're required to get zoning approval at least, correct?
Correct. So there are a whole bunch of steps. This is the next step. After this step, we will start the land development process. and we will start the interconnection application with the utility as well, and those will run in parallel. We can't start either of those until this is resolved.
In your investigations of the property, did you look at any historic aerials or historic uses of the property?
We did. We looked back to, I think, the latest pictures that we could find, which was in, and Justin can speak to it, I think, better, but into 1938, I believe.
Correct. And what did you recall what those pictures showed as far as the historic use of the property?
It showed in some of those pictures that it was either a mining or adjacent to mining.
But beyond that, from 1938 until now, we're unable to ascertain what the consistent use of the property has been. Is that correct?
Correct.
And who, as far as the operations of the facility, who will be operating the facility?
Susquehanna Solar will be the owner of the facility, and we will have a local person who will do operations and maintenance.
So following construction, can you explain what operations and maintenance means as far as what folks would see on a day-to-day, monthly, yearly basis?
You bet. A solar facility after it's built does not require a lot of maintenance. It will be remotely monitored, and there will be a person that will come out on a schedule or as needed, and he or she will evaluate and make sure that everything is running as it should. In addition to that, depending upon how much rain we get, 2 or 3 times a year, we will have someone come out and they will clean up the edges and make sure that everything is it stays mowed and is looking good. That will be minimized, and I think Justin will talk on it, that will be minimized by the type of plantings that we will do in the facility.
Sure. And as far as who receives the power, do you know which local utility that will be?
It goes right back to the local utility, UGI. UGI.
And so UGI receives the power and then determines from there where it gets distributed, correct? And as far as construction, how long is the construction period?
The longest part after this is going to be the land development. That's going to take 6 months to a year. After all of that and all of the other boxes are checked, including the things that we talked about tonight, the actual construction will be 3 to 4 months.
And then, as far as you mentioned a few people, how many people might visit the site on a monthly basis after it's operational?
One person 3 to 8 times a month.
And then how will maintenance access the facility?
There will be one maintenance road off of, Justin, I'm sorry, what's the name of the road?
One off Middle Road, and then the other off Kelfield Drive.
So do you mind repeating?
One off Middle, there will be 2 access points, one off Middle Road and one off Kelfield Drive.
And then those access, are they pickup trucks, a landscape truck?
It would be a landscape truck or a pickup truck.
So very minimal traffic
Correct.
to speak of.
Much less than any other use that you would put there. If there were additional houses, that would be a lot more traffic on any of those really, really narrow roads.
And does this operation require any public water at all?
It does not.
So it wouldn't burden any public facilities such as water or otherwise?
It will not use public water. It will not use public sewer.
And are there certain outside agency permits like NPDES and Public Utility Commission approval we have to obtain for this?
There are a whole litany of different approvals. It is not just 2 guys checking boxes. It is following the NPDES as a state program. It's working closely with zoning and the engineer and doing a whole bunch of things to make sure that this is done with lots of tick boxes from the city to make sure that it's followed to the T.
So if we're able to obtain zoning, an acceptable condition would be obtaining all necessary permits from federal, state, local, outside agency approvals necessary.
Yes, we will obtain all of the necessary permitting and follow it.
And as far as industry standards, or strike that, who do you propose will be the installer for this facility?
We propose that MVE Group will be the installer. They are a large EPC firm that specializes in solar energy in Pennsylvania. They have done 100 projects in Pennsylvania. When Penn State University needed someone to install their solar panel, that's who they called.
And then as As far as MV's qualifications, they're listed with Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection as an approved solar installer, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And as far as their ability to meet industry standards, you're comfortable with that based on their track record of dozens or hundreds of projects?
Yes.
And as far as the panels themselves, can you describe generally what comprises a solar facility?
I'm going to expand just a little bit. You can find anything you want on the internet. 10 years ago, a lot of the panels, especially the ones made in China, had a bunch of heavy metal stuff in them, cadmium and other things which are not conducive to being environmentally friendly. The new ones which are made, they're made in Alabama. They also have a plant in Canada, but the majority of them are made in Alabama. It's primarily glass and silicone, and it's aluminum framed. The MSDS sheet was provided as part, I believe, as part of the submission package, so that can be reviewed.
And for the record, that's Exhibit A7.
So as Exhibit A7, and that can be reviewed.
So as far as the size and height of the panels,
The panels themselves are 4 foot by 8 foot. In the front, they will all be a fixed mount. So there are two types. If you drive around and go see another solar facility, there will be two types. They will either be a fixed mount where it will stay at one angle all the time, or one that will tilt and follow the sun. What we are proposing is a fixed mount panel, so no moving parts in that. It's going to point at about 20 degrees south all of the time. In the front, it's about 2 feet off the ground, and in the back, it's about 9 feet off the ground. So, and the benefit of this is that the topography of the location slopes a little bit. So without moving a whole bunch of dirt, you can put the panels in that elevation without having to completely go in and, spend 3 months on a bulldozer getting it to where you want.
you're not stripping the entire property.
No, we're not stripping the entire property.
So the intention is to remove as little topsoil or move as little topsoil as possible.
Correct.
And
There, if I could, the other part of the panel, and there, as I said, there's two different styles of solar farms. There are solar farms that include a battery storage, and those that do not. We are not contemplating putting battery storage and all of the issues that go with that in our facility.
so it would be the panels and the interconnection apparatus, and that's it.
And some inverters.
What is an inverter?
And so a solar panel takes the sun from both sides of the panel. They're bifacial panels, which means it absorbs the sun from the front, and then it absorbs the sun from the back as well. So anything that reflects off the grass, and it absorbs it, and it turns that into DC or direct current energy. An inverter changes direct current to alternating current. And so alternating current is what all of our houses are, so it needs to be alternating current to go back to the grid.
And these will be anti-glare coated panels, correct?
They will, yes.
So
Any glare.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Any glare is waste. So the panels are designed to absorb every single thing that they can, every bit of sunlight that they can with very little glare.
And as far as touched on this a bit, is there any concern regarding the materials within the panels or any contaminants that would affect the environment?
There is not.
And as far as the overall facility itself, are there any lights or anything proposed that will be seen in the evening?
There will not.
Unless the municipality
If-
requires
if-
low wattage security lights or something?
And if we were required by the city to put something, we would.
You said that the highest anything would be about 9 feet or so, maybe a little bit more depending upon the grade.
Not much more than 9.
So any buffering, once it's mature, would be taller than anything on the facility other than a potential interconnection facility.
Correct.
So it would be screened from the outside completely.
Correct.
As far as fire or emergency services, is it your practice and experience to work with the local fire company?
It is. It is. We will meet before the start of construction with the fire department. We will provide to them adequate training for and making sure they have adequate training and equipment for this. We will provide annually or as needed incremental training for the fire department. And additionally, just like other businesses, we will have what's called a knock box or Knox box. It will be a place where they can obtain a key without one of us in case there is a reason for them to enter into the facility.
And during land development, we'll review access roads, things like that, with the fire company to make sure that appropriate access points are there and they're able to access as they feel comfortable.
They will. Those roads will be wider than some of the existing roads in the city.
And as far as, we've talked about the panels, talked a little bit about the racking that holds the panels. What's underneath the panels?
We're going to put a meadow mix of low growth grass that will be pollinator friendly, that will encourage it to absorb the water and require not a lot of maintenance.
And then you've heard from the reading of the Planning Commission's conditions, the requirement for decommissioning.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain the useful life of the facility and then what that would look like for decommissioning?
Yeah, the existing code does not call out decommissioning. We think that's an important safety net for the city.
Perhaps a best practice.
Perhaps a best practice. That's probably a better way to say it. I can't speak to other solar facilities, but that's something that we volunteer with all of ours, which is a bond which will be in excess of the price to have the facility removed. That will be secured against the property and a copy given to the city. The price of that decommissioning will be reviewed every 5 years or on a different number if the city prefers it, and they will always be kept current with current copy of that. So if it's, the number will typically be 110% of the cost of the decommissioning. So we'll get a quote if it's whatever, the bond will be 110% of that. To the city's satisfaction.
And we enter into an agreement with the city to be recorded against the property in perpetuity, so that would be an obligation that's on long after us if we're no longer here.
Correct. The typical life of a panel is 25 years, but just like cars, gas mileage in cars over the last 10 years has dramatically improved. Today we estimate that these panels will last 25 years. But depending upon improvements in panels, panels degrade and become less efficient each year by a little teeny bit. So they are projected to last 25 years, but it may be in year 18, it may be in year 16, it may be all the way in year 25 that those panels are, I would assume they will be replaced, and this will continue for a period of time. And when we are finished with generating power using solar in this facility, we will take everything back away, and the ground will have had 15 to 25, whatever, however long we were there, additional years to rest.
And as far as the recommendations of the Planning Commission, you heard them read, but just that you can affirm them. Is there any issue with the recommendation to obtain land development approval from the Planning Commission and City Council and any other required permits, approvals, or consents?
No.
That would be the next step after zoning, correct?
Correct.
And is there any issue or concern with providing screening and setbacks sufficient to block any residential property's view of the facility?
No, that should be an industry standard.
And as far as, you just touched on this, but posting the security for decommissioning the project and the construction of the project for any potential damage to public roadways, any issue with that?
No. Again, should be best practice.
And also the requirement to provide a maintenance schedule. Is there any issue doing that?
Not at all.
And as far as the solar facility, we talked about fire, but is there any burden on facilities, utilities, services, or otherwise of the city or any public utility by this facility?
There is not. It's not going to increase. There's not going to be additional doors to increase police or demand on schools or culinary water or sewer or any of the other facilities that could be provided for another use.
You heard me say that this is a truly passive use of the land once it's installed. based on your years of experience in the industry, is that a true statement?
That is a true statement. This is the only thing that I could think of that would go there that is not going to seriously impact the traffic on those roads.
And you heard me reference the general standards for conditional use, and based upon a review of items and preparation for this evening. Is it your belief that this facility is consistent with the comprehensive plan?
It is.
And you've stated this previously, but will the facility burden public services and facilities such as streets, sewers, water, police, and fire protection?
It will not burden them.
Will the facility have adequate access to the site regarding the width and pavement for emergency services vehicles?
They will.
Will the facility adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare due to changes in traffic conditions?
It will not.
Is the facility compatible with the adjoining development and character of the zoning district and neighborhood in which the property is located?
It is. It adds to the buffering between the industrial zone and the neighborhood.
So to touch on that, because it's passive use, doesn't create any traffic, doesn't create any noise, it really serves as almost a buffer adjacent to an existing transmission line to the adjoining townships and heavy industrial uses.
Correct.
And this is really the only use other than no use that does that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Will this facility adversely affect neighborhood property values and aesthetic characteristics in the neighborhood where it is proposed to be located?
No.
And will this facility adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare as related to drainage, air quality, noise, and natural features of the land?
It will not.
And will the facility be injurious to the public interest?
It will not.
And as far as other governmental jurisdictions, you previously stated, and we restate that Susquehanna Solar will obtain all necessary license permits and approvals from any other required entity or outside agency.
We will.
And if this requested conditional use is approved, we comply with all other city zoning and land development requirements.
We will.
I have no further questions for you. I'd ask if the council has any questions for Mr. Wadsworth. I thank you for your testimony.
Before we move on, I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions. First of all, you talked about public utility would have to make certain approvals, and then later you talked about UGI. Is UGI the one that would have to make approvals?
So the interconnection.
For the interconnection.
The interconnection. So how we're going to connect to the power line. The interconnection, how we're going to connect to the power line.
So that's the public utility you were referring to. And when you talked about the screening for the neighbors,
yes,
you talked about that kind of quickly, and I didn't fully understand that. Can you explain how that would take place?
So we intend to
Can you
put.
just explain to the neighbors?
There's a picture of some screening in the background. The intent is to put where there is not existing shrubbery that would make this work. We intend to put a mix of trees and shrubs along as a barrier along the outside of the project, which is going to screen from a visual and a noise perspective. No noise? So the noise that it's going, an addition of screening that it's going to.
Okay, sir, you have an opportunity to ask questions. Would you explain what you mean by
you bet.
noise?
If I can be afforded one more sentence. You currently hear truck traffic down that road. You currently hear traffic from cars, motorcycles.
Excuse me. None of your words are being taken because the stenographer does not know who you are. So if you could please let him finish, everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard.
So any potential and increasing in the amount of any vegetation will absorb other ambient noise from cars, from transmission lines, from any other source. An addition of additional vegetation will absorb that noise.
And two other questions. The planning commission recommendations, you have no qualifications with regard to any of the recommendations that were made?
All of those recommendations were solid. We support all of the recommendations from the Planning Commission.
Okay. And do you intend to produce any expert testimony with regard to property values at this point?
Not this evening.
Okay, at this point, we'll move to your second witness, and then when people come up to ask questions, they can ask questions either or both.
John, is there anything else you wish us to cover or touch on?
We are guests in the city, and we appreciate the time that we've been afforded for this, genuinely.
All right, thank you.
Justin, will you join me? Justin, can you please state your full name and professional background for the record?
Yes, my name is Justin Klee. I'm a project manager. My name is Justin Klee. I'm a project manager at Bowler, the civil engineering consultant for the applicant. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania with the license number PE093373.
And you've previously testified before municipal governing bodies, zoning proceedings, conditional use hearings, special exceptions, admitted as an expert in the field of civil engineering. Is that correct?
That is correct.
May I have Mr. Klee is admitted as an expert in the field of civil engineering? Justin, you and your firm Bowler prepared the plans before the board this evening, correct?
That is correct.
And did you review, before the city council, did you review the city zoning ordinance in the preparation of those plans?
Yes, we did.
Are you familiar with the property and the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes.
Can you give a summary of the property itself and the surrounding area?
Yes, so the property is located in a residential district. It is a steep wooded lot, currently vacant of any other uses. It seems to be from our investigation that there is some sort of dirt road or trail system that does go through the property.
And do you mind giving a summary of the plan that's to our right, which is Exhibit A2 in the packet provided to the council?
Yes, so the plan that's presented over to the right here, it proposes 4 solar arrays containing about 15 to 22 rows of panels, all of them oriented in the southern direction, and as John had previously mentioned, they are of fixed tilt, so they do not rotate with the sun. There are 2 gravel access roads, one on Middle Road and then the other onto Kellfield Drive. Those will both be gravel access roads, and the one on Middle Road will require a PennDOT minimal, a PennDOT permit for that access, and that will be obtained during the land development process. There is an associated transformer and inverter with each of these arrays, so there are 4 total transformers and 4 total inverters. And then besides that, as John had mentioned, we will provide a planted buffering around the entirety of the property to shield the use from other districts and other properties.
And the property in the proposed solar facility is bisected by transmission lines, is that correct?
That is correct. Transmissions line owned by UGI.
And in adjoining Newport Township, can you generally give the character of the land uses and development that's occurred across Middle Road from this property?
Yes. So there are, if you directly onto Newport Township, there are some residential properties. The further into the township that you do go, you start getting into more of a industrial setting to the township.
As far as general land uses, a solar facility would then provide a buffer of sorts along the transmission lines to the adjacent industrial uses in Newport Township. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
You also prepared an environmental impact study for this application, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And so, forgive me so we don't have to play hot potato with the microphone. Do you mind walking through the environmental impact study and calling out the individual sections and what their findings state as required by the ordinance?
Yes. So starting with the soil type, that's section 500-705.1.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're referring to the environmental impact statement at Exhibit A3, and I'm sorry to do that, Justin.
So regarding the soil type, generally the permeability and if it's adequate for percolation for every 5 acres, we pulled a soil report from the USDA website, which notes that soils have a naturally low permeability but are well drained on the site. At this moment, no percolation tests have been performed. If deemed necessary during the land development process, and depending on if any stormwater facilities are required, percolation tests will be provided to the city. Referring to section 500-705.2 for surface waters, the nearest waterway is the south branch of the Newport Creek, located about 200 feet to the northwest of this, the subject property. Will the runoff from the panels create any water management concerns that could impact nearby neighbors or nearby waterways? No, the proposed use will mitigate stormwater runoff to meet the ordinance and state requirements. Will panels create any chemical additives to the runoff coming from the property? No, it will not. There will be an adequate stormwater management plan and soil testing that is done during the land development process with the city, and that will meet all city and state standards.
And before the next section on trees, I just want to cover, you're familiar with the vegetation that's on site, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you heard Mr. Wadsworth's characterization of from a technical perspective, what is on this property?
So there are no mature trees of value on the site. It is all young growth trees, a bunch of saplings and underbrush.
So what is a tree of value is a technical term. Can you explain that in lay terms what that means?
Sure, it would be any significant tree that could be of growth, old growth, whether it be oak, maple, very old in age, 50, 100 years old, that have been a staple in the community for a while.
So the undergrowth that's on there, that's not helping any existing mature trees or near mature trees that are on the property today, correct?
That is correct.
And so a forest has to be maintained and underbrush cleared out in some manner, correct?
That is correct, yes. And as John had mentioned, we had reviewed aerial photos that dated back to 1938. So 1938 all the way up to probably the mid-1980s, a portion of that property was field, and it did not consist of any wooded land at that point.
And if there is a forest and it has substantial undergrowth, what eventually happens to that forest? What takes over?
The undergrowth would take over, and the large mature trees the larger trees would die off.
Is that consistent with what has or will occur on this property if left in its current state?
That is correct, yes.
So I'm sorry, please continue with the findings of the environmental impact study.
Yep, so referring to section 500-705.3 for ground cover. So existing.
What page you on?
Of the.
All right, go ahead.
As I had mentioned, it's section 500-705.3, ground cover. So the ordinance was asking for the extent of impervious coverage, impervious ground cover on the site. As we see it, there is zero impervious on the site currently. The proposed impervious that is proposed with this application is 0.83 acres for the gravel access drive, transformer pads, and inverter pads. And then the extent of the existing vegetated cover is 40.84 acres, consistent with the entire property boundary. And then in the proposed condition, the the vegetative cover on the site will be 40.01 acres.
And as far as, sorry, please continue. Does this coverage ratio create any environmental concerns in your professional opinion?
No, it does not.
And did any of the prior sections you testified to in the environmental impact statement create any environmental concerns in your professional opinion?
No, it did not.
All right, please continue.
All right, so moving on to sections 500-705.4. Speaking to the maximum existing elevation on the site currently is 694 feet above sea level. The minimum existing elevation on site is 589 feet above sea level. The proposed elevations, both minimum and maximum, are not going to change. We're not lifting the site. We're not cutting into the site at all. The benefit to this use is minimal earthwork and utilizing the current slopes and current property as it currently stands. And in fact, so because it's been on this portion of land has been undeveloped for a significant portion of time. If it's zoned residential at one point, it would have been developed as residential property. However, the significant topography and steepness across the property has been prohibitive to allow any additional development of residential properties, making this a good use because it uses the natural topography.
And as far as disturbance of any slopes, why is solar unique as compared to other uses relative to disturbance of steep slopes or clearing of ground on the property? And in steep slope or sloped areas, why is less disturbance better?
So in steep slopes, you tend to have more runoff that occurs. So in this case, if you're cutting the slopes, adding a lot of earthwork, you're altering the natural ground, the natural features, and you're changing the drainage patterns of the existing property. In this case, we're able to utilize that existing topography. All the water that's currently going in every direction is going to be maintained in that existing direction in the proposed condition.
And then, as far as the topography, I believe we previously talked about some slopes that may have been disturbed over time. Does that sound correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it does appear that there are a few areas that may have been mining piles back, in the earlier days when the mining had occurred, adjacent and slightly onto the property.
And is it a fair statement that by any grading and seeding of this property, the steep slopes would be more stabilized than they are today?
That is correct. Yes.
Why again is that a good thing?
It stabilizes, so it reduces erosion coming from the hillside, and with additional stabilization in the form of short meadow plantings in the realm of 11 to 15 inches, it'll help uptake any stormwater runoff that is generated.
And then the stormwater is not necessarily a portion of the environmental impact statement. As we transition from topography to stormwater, can you generally explain the stormwater methodology for a solar facility?
Yes. So typically, as defined by PADEP, a solar panel farm the area of the panels is not considered impervious because the panels are lifted off the ground and angled at such an angle that there is existing vegetative cover under those panels. And there are requirements set by DEP as to how far those need to be separated and at what slope the property needs to be, and all of those will be met. The runoff from each of the panels, while that water is being deflected from the ground underneath that panel, that water is then sheet flows underneath the next panel. So all of that displaced water is just taken up by the planted grasses and meadow underneath the next subsequent panel.
So again, solar is unique in that the stormwater is maintained in a much more concentrated manner than a development, even single-family homes which have roofs, driveways, patios, pools, things like that create substantial runoff. This does the opposite. Is that correct?
Correct. Typically in these sorts of developments, we utilize structural vegetated filter strips and additional tree plantings to offset any stormwater that's required. And all of those are approved by DEP as mitigation.
And I'm sorry, folks, I'm having trouble hearing, and I want the stenographer to be able to hear everything. Those types of plantings are considered BMPs, or best management practices, by DEP. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And as far as when you have BMPs on a property, that triggers a requirement to have a recorded document called an operations and maintenance agreement to ensure those are maintained and they're working properly. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And so if approved, it's certain that this property will have a stormwater operations and maintenance agreement in perpetuity that would contain all the required teeth by DEP pursuant to their various regulations. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And the property does not have that today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and thank you. So if you don't mind, please continue on to groundwater in your environmental impact study.
All right, so section 500-705.5 related to groundwater. The questions that were asked in the ordinance were what is the average depth of the seasonal high water table, the minimum depth, and the maximum depth. So as I had noted before, we did pull a soil report from the USDA website. That they noted that the depth to the water table is on average 80 inches. A geotechnical study will be performed and submitted to confirm all that information during the land development process. And then the next...
So related to groundwater in somewhat, does this property require any water supply, sewage system, solid waste removal, or even any public utility connection other than electricity of any kind?
No, it does not.
So to be clear, the only public utility connection is to the electrical transmission lines, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So no impact otherwise to any public facility?
That is correct.
And I'm sorry, please continue with air quality.
Yep, so air quality is section 500-705.9. There are no expected changes to air quality after the construction of these panels. Now there are no emissions associated with this. There is no significant traffic generation, so there's no additional traffic emissions. You have the occasional maintenance vehicle, as John had testified to earlier, and as he had mentioned also, is that we are planting a pollinator-friendly low-grow metal mix, approximately 11 to 15 inches in height, and then additional buffer plantings that surround the property.
And so things that affect air quality, emissions from vehicles, dust from roads, dust from even agriculture, things even homes emit emissions, things like fireplaces, stoves, anything like that, correct?
That is correct.
So this will have a lesser impact on air quality than really any other possible use of the property. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct, yes.
And then as far as noise, I just want to, I think Mr. Wadsworth testified forgive me, John, but in a layperson that no noise, meaning no discernible noise. Can you put a expert explanation as to what noise level, if any, might be expected and what that means to a layperson? Apologies, John.
So relating to section 500-705.10 related to noise, as John had mentioned, there's no discernible noise across property lines. So at the only noise generating items on the property would be the transformers and the inverters. It would be similar to what is currently there in the UGI transmission line. Those have transformers on them as well. So whatever light hum or anything that's along those lines would be generated by a transformer or an inverter. Now those have levels. I think the inverter does have levels of 65 decibels at 3 feet away, and that drastically dissipates as you get further away from that object. And the transformer has a 63 decibel reading at 1 foot from the piece of equipment. And again, it dissipates significantly as you go away from.
And as a point of reference, the amount of it's approximately 50 decibels for a quiet running dishwasher in a home, without any buffering. Correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And again, you're stating that in your capacity as an expert in civil engineering, you've reviewed various sound studies of various facilities, and you know that to be correct.
That is correct, yes. And then as to control, to ensure that the neighbors and residents do not hear any discernible noise. The layout is designed such that placing the equipment is as far as possible from any property lines to mitigate that, and then also additional buffer plantings along all the property lines that would help, in addition to not having any discernible noise at the property line, but to further have that protection.
And though we're not submitting it as an exhibit, we're using it as a point of reference. The board in the rear that shows the screening, that's representative of the type of screening, not the density of screening we're intending to install at this facility. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. The buffering will be as required in the city ordinance and to the satisfaction of council and the planning commission.
And that was a full screen from residential views into the facility. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you heard Mr. Wadsworth testimony about the height of anything on the facility. So any buffer will be taller in very short order from anything that is inside the facility, save an interconnection apparatus, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Overall, can you summarize the impact of the proposed use and development and any impact on critical areas as required in the environmental impact study?
Yeah, so based on the ordinance requirements and the proposed use, the impacts that were outlined in the ordinance, there are, excuse me for a second, let me. All right, so there is minimal impervious cover that's proposed on the site. So the additional runoff that is proposed is minimal, if any, due to there being a pollinator-friendly meadow mix being proposed. The entirety of the panels, the panel array, will be surrounded by a 8-foot tall fence that is specifically of a variety similar to a deer fence, just to avoid any conflicts with any wildlife. And then minimal, if any, effects to groundwater. No effects to the surrounding infrastructure. And as it pertains to the impact on critical areas, critical area is defined as stream corridors, streams, floodplain areas, wetlands, slopes equal or exceeding 15%, soils classified as highly acidic or highly erodible, soils classified as having a high water table, land and associated soils which display poor percolation, mature stands of native vegetation, and aquifer recharge and discharge area. It proposes, there are some slopes on the property that do exceed 15%. There is minimal grading that's associated with this, and as part of this design and as part of the review process, there will be significant slope stabilization to stabilize any of those slopes up to and exceeding 15%.
So, and as far, I'm going to ask you a couple questions regarding the general standards for conditional use, but only those that are within your area of expertise. So please answer yes or no to the following. So is this facility consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
And will this facility burden public services and facilities such as streets, sewers, water, police, and fire protection?
No.
Will the facility have adequate access to the site regarding the width and pavement for emergency service vehicles?
Yes.
And will this facility adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare due to changes in traffic conditions?
No.
Is this facility compatible with adjoining development and the character of the zoning district and neighborhood in which it is proposed to be located?
Yes.
Will the facility adversely affect the aesthetic characteristics in the neighborhood where it is proposed to be located?
No.
Will the facility adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare as related to the drainage, air quality, noise, and natural features of the land?
No.
And will this facility be injurious to the public interest?
No.
And have all of your have all of these statements and questions in your testimony been given in your capacity in the field of civil engineering?
Yes.
I thank you for your testimony, and I would ask counsel if there's any questions for Mr. Klee. Thank you, Justin.
Council's going to ask all their questions at the end. Do you need a break? Are you good for now? Okay. Let's move on to just questions from...
One matter of housekeeping.
Sure.
I do have an argument at the end where I'll touch on some things in the zoning ordinance, the city comprehensive plan, and the county comprehensive plan as well. So just want to make sure we eventually reserve time for that.
All right. And with regard to the comprehensive plan of the city and the ordinance, there's been reference to the Nanticoke zoning ordinance. Obviously, those are not being submitted, either the plan or the zoning ordinance. We will just take judicial notice of those documents
Agreed.
For the purposes of this hearing.
And I can reference if it's I can reference them sufficiently in argument, but I agree judicial notice is sufficient, just like the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. We had a sign-in sheet for people coming in who indicated they wanted to speak. The first person on this list, John Wadsworth, W-A-D.
That's me. I'm not.
John, you already spoke.
I'm not sure I want to hear any more from you.
You sure you don't want to speak anymore?
I'll answer questions if it's asked.
All right. How about Jocelyn? Jocelyn. Jocelyn, could you spell your full name first and last for the court reporter?
Jocelyn, Jocelyn, Holodick, Holodick Reed,
And Jocelyn, for the record, your address is 1680 South Hanover Street?
Correct.
And is that in Nanticoke?
That is in Nanticoke.
Okay. And will you be sworn in, please?
I do.
All right, Jocelyn, you can ask any questions of the applicant that you have.
Hello. Thank you for being here tonight. I was asked on behalf of our community to kind of be our representative. I know some other people have individual questions that they'd like to ask of you, but I want to start off with our concerns so that you can hear that as a community first and then some questions as well. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, they have already heard many of the individuals. I am a chemistry teacher. I am 100% for solar power, not in my backyard. I teach about this technology to my students. I am all about climate change. I do believe we are in a climate crisis. And I understand the monocyclic silicon solar panel that you use, the Blacken technology to reduce the glare. But I still have concerns, and that's why I'm here tonight to bring them up and speak. The first is the deforestation. I guess my first question, which wasn't supposed to be a question, but after hearing all three of you speak, have all three of you walked this property?
Yes.
All three of you? Have you walked the property, sir?
I have not.
I will invite you to coffee, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning at my house, 1680 South Hanover Street. I sit on my deck, which I am the last house on Hanover Street. I will be surrounded by two sides of these solar panels, two parcels. I sit right next to the UGI power line, which I'll explain to you a little bit about. Come have coffee with me tomorrow morning. I'm dead serious. This is not a joke. Come join me, 1680 South Hanover Street. We can sit on my deck. We can enjoy the mature, over 25, 30-foot trees that I look at every day. The bird condo that I call home. I wish if I had known this, I would have had an article of a picture of the deer that I just took just the other day in front of these mature trees for you. Unfortunately, I don't have it printed out to have it entered into exhibit, but and I do enter exhibit our petition. We are all 100% against this.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Attorney Fox, do you have any exhibit or any objection to R1? Call it R1.
Just ask that the petition be given the weight that it's due under Pennsylvania law.
Okay.
Thank you for your concerns.
Thank
It'll
you.
be researched, or it'll be received. We have 270 signatures on here?
Yes.
That's one. Okay. That'll be received.
So there is considerable forest land on here with very mature trees. I know myself, I do like to yield an axe at occasion. There is no way I could cut down these trees. They are not saplings. There are deers, there is baby deers, there is snakes, there are the occasional bear that lives here. There is some water, wetland behind some of the homes where there is amphibians and frogs. There are birds of all types, and I like to sit, as I said, in the morning. I'm a school teacher, so I'm off. This is my refuge. This is where I sit in the morning, in the summer. This is where I come home after a rough day, and I get some stress relief. And the thought of this solar panel going literally in my backyard is as upsetting to the point where I haven't slept in a month. I don't know about any of you. I haven't slept in a month over this. There is a glare associated. I know that these are blackened panels, but there is a glare that is associated, which is often considered similar to that coming off of a lake, the water. And of course, you need electromagnetic radiation to make solar panels work. So you are going to have to cut down the trees. A tree absorbs about 150 gallons of water a day. We just had a deluge of water. I know myself in my backyard, we were getting water out of our basement just before we came here. And you're going to put grass low-lying 11 to 18 inches. Grass does absorb less water than a mature tree can. So we could see an increase in some of that water runoff. You've already mentioned you're not going to change the grade of the land. There is an extremely steep slope on a lot of this land. And that water runoff has to go somewhere. We know trees do help to stabilize slopes with their roots, especially long mature trees. And in addition to that, with that slope, I'm concerned about they are most effective when they are south-facing. They're north-facing slopes, and you're going to face them south. So you have a slope this way, but you need to face the panels this way, which logically to me doesn't seem like it's as compatible. Now on Middle Road it is south-facing. I can see where that might potentially work in your favor, but the others are a north-facing slope. So again, I question the compatibility of this. It has been shown that it's usually 5 degrees warmer around a solar farm of this nature as opposed to what it would be in forested land. And again, this is forested land. I don't know about you, but in this heat wave that we've just been experiencing, my air conditioning unit has been running in overdrive. I can't imagine the increased cost it's going to be now to heat my home because those mature trees which have provided shade have been cut down. You can't have solar energy with those trees there. I mean, I know myself, I've looked into putting solar panels on my roof many, many years ago, and I have a giant tree, which I love, in the front of my house that provides shade. I said, I'm not cutting it down. And they said, well, then it's not feasible, lady, to put the solar panels on because you're not going to get enough sun during the day to generate any usable electricity. In addition to that, I question why your choice was of where to put the inverter and where to put the transformer so close to the backs of our homes. Why not move them down further towards where the industrial part of the land is in the section that is between the industrial and Hanover Street? We know that, one of the things that the inverters could potentially do is those inverters could actually interfere with our Wi-Fi. As a school teacher, I am required to teach on bad weather days from 7:30 in the morning until 2 o'clock for 46 minutes every class period to my students. I pay for the highest, fastest Wi-Fi that is available, and I know that there could be possible interference at those inverter sites of that electromagnetic radiation with the Wi-Fi, which is in Nanticoke, I think we could all say, occasionally spotty at best, right?
Ma'am, will you just pause for 1 second? Do you want to respond to that? About the Wi-Fi?
The location of the transformers and inverters, is there any flexibility with that?
Absolutely, that can be addressed in land development, and we appreciate bringing it up.
Thank you.
Are you aware of any evidence that they impact Wi-Fi as indicated by Jocelyn?
We are not.
I have sites. I actually have a 66 slide PowerPoint, but I wasn't going to bore everyone with that, with all the sites of where I got all of my information from. As a school teacher, I always have facts, so I can definitely provide them if you would like.
Well, if you have them, now's the time to do it.
Well,
Mr. Reagan, we're required to meet FCC standards, and if there are any impacts, we are required to mitigate them. So we're not aware of the industry standards.
Listen to you, listen to her.
All right, hold on. She asked a question, and we're trying to get an answer to the question. So everyone can ask questions.
When are they going to leave Luzerne County alone? It's not about what's legal, it's about what's right.
Jocelyn has the floor. Please proceed.
So a lot of my sites come from client. No, sorry, that's the wrong one. I don't have Wi-Fi access here, unfortunately. But there is a site that I reached out to, ceds.org Solar, which is actually a solar-friendly company that has helped residents like myself try to mitigate when situations like this arise, that provided a lot of this information. And it's a great site. Actually, you can reach out to them and they will actually provide legal counsel. It was just not enough time to have legal counsel here provided to them by us. So the deforestation, we talked about that as well, but you mentioned the trail that is there along the UGI lines. Are you aware that is a quad trail? And there is quite heavy quad movement in there. And that quad trail kicks up not only a lot of dirt as someone who lives directly on this, but in addition to that, we have found people in our backyards.
Does that create noise?
The quads?
Yeah.
On occasion.
Okay.
It is not constant. So my question for you is, you know, we talked about minimal people and things like that. How are you going to deal with, you know, the curious kid that drove by in their quad that wants to hop that fence and see what that solar panel is all about that might hurt themselves, or that other individual that's, hey, let's go in there and see if we can make some money. We're stealing catalytic converters. Let's steal some silicon. And you know, it is a semiconductor that is actually in demand. We know we are in a semiconducting drought. That we are, you know, in need of these semiconductors. So what's to keep that from, you know, what security measures are you going to employ to make sure we keep our kids safe if they do try to hop that fence, as well as, you know, to protect the solar panels so that they don't get broken?
Would you like us to answer? I don't want to.
Are you being rhetorical, or do you want us to answer?
I'm asking. What security measures?
There's going to be an 8-foot fence, and I would expect that an 8-foot fence is going to keep. You're laughing. That is our intent. You have a 6.5-foot door with a lock on it. We're going to put it in the front of your house. We're going to have an 8-foot fence surrounding the property with 2 access gates that are going to be locked all the time. If someone wants to come in with and drive through a 8-foot high fence, someone's going to be able to do that. The same thing that in any other facility, any other business around here that has a security fence, if someone wants to gain access to it, someone is going to. They'll be trespassing, and they will be climbing an 8-foot high fence. I don't know who those persons are. The persons that are driving the ATVs today, in my mind, are trespassing.
They are.
And there's no longer going to be that noise, that dust, and those other things that are associated with that transportation.
How are you going to keep the ATVs out? They ride along the UGI line. You're going to completely fence in the UGI line?
We're going to completely fence. Justin, can you show?
Because I spoke to UGI the other day.
Yeah, the fence circumnavigates all the arrays. This is a separate property. We don't have jurisdiction over that property, so there wouldn't be any fence on the UGI.
Right, exactly. So they will still ride these lines. And they will also, let me give you a heads up. Okay, I'm trying to be helpful to you. I have found rocks in my pool. Okay, what's to keep them? The trail is dirt and rocks. What's to keep them from throwing rocks and breaking these panels?
I can't control what people do on other people's property. The UGI right away, whether if a person, we're going to fence our property. If a person is driving a UTV or an ATV down that or down your street or otherwise, that's not something I have any control of. If that person, he or she throws a rock, I don't have any control of it. Whether it hits your window or my solar panel, I don't have any control over it. So if someone's going to be a vandal and break something, it's going to be a lot easier to hit your window that's sub 50 feet from the street than my panel that's through 100% screening that has a setback away from it. Still possible. Golf ball would probably be easier, but it's not. If people are going to vandalize it, people are going to vandalize it.
So the question then is, if these panels get broken, they're not going to be effective.
Then we're going to replace them.
Okay, and so how are you going to know if it's broken? How long is it going to sit there that it's broken for and not working? And then you do have, I know you said we're not using the cadmium type and it is the silicon, but even so, those things could still get in. You could have broken glass. You know, there's a lot of small children that live in this development. You know, I think of kids, I see them, they're, you know, playing baseball, they're playing basketball and things like that. If they're in the backyard and a baseball goes over, little kids will be kids. They decide to try to climb that fence or something to get that ball or whatever. Now you have a broken panel from something that previously happened and they could cut themselves on it. You know, these are concerns. We're bringing concerns. This is our community. We know who lives here.
I appreciate your concerns. That's an 8-foot tall fence. That is a panel that is 8 foot tall with a distance with 100% screening, and then the panel. The site will be remotely monitored. If the power output goes down, or we can determine that we need to go out and perform maintenance on the panel. So we will go out and we will perform maintenance on the panel. You talk about kids being kids. I get that. That is also trespassing. I get that as well.
Yeah.
This is a secure facility with an 8-foot tall fence, and we would expect that 8-foot tall fence is going to be a deterrent for people to get into the property.
So I know you said that there won't be any batteries on site, so that would mitigate a little bit of the fire situation, but you could have arc. You absolutely could have arc. That could happen, and so you could still have an electrical fire. Are you aware that the one parcel of land has no actual access to an already existing road? So when there is a fire in that one parcel of land, this is the parcel of land that is behind Robert Street and the UGI land. This has happened previously when there was a brush fire. I've had to call the police or the fire department, and the fire department has to go with packs on their back. I've already spoken to a firefighter who said that that's generally what they do. They do not try to ride the trucks on those off-roads. I know you said that you're going to put the gravel roads in for access, but the question is they're going to have to go through, from what I understand, the Kellfield entrance and then get out the fence to go across the power line to get to that parcel of land that could potentially have a massive electrical fire, which would indeed, you know, you've got aluminum burning, you've got other chemicals burning, you have, you know, the proximity to homes, you know, the response time.
Yeah. How are they gonna get over that 8-foot fence?
So access by the fire department is with a knockbox. So the fire department is going to have, just like in any other business, the fire department is going to have a key which will open a box on our fence, which will allow them to get a key to have access to all of the access on our property.
But they're going to have to go through 3 gates to get to that parcel of land.
Okay.
So that's timing. That we're talking about timing, response time for the fire department.
So today they go up and we were, if you came early, we were all had the pleasure of seeing a new firefighter.
Yes,
brought in.
I was here.
And it was awesome.
It was wonderful.
Today, per your testimony, they would drive to the end of the road, they would stop, they would put backpacks on. I don't know, but I think that driving through a couple of gates is going to be faster than putting backpacks on and then driving through, in the very unlikely chance that fire protection is needed in that.
But it is a possibility.
It is a possibility.
It is a possibility.
And there's always a possibility for everything.
So,
every time we fly, we do a safety demonstration. Flying is extremely safe. Yes, they're going to need to have access, but this is an extremely safe, without battery system.
So we have the deforestation. We have the, change to what we now currently know as our community. I know you say it's minimal at best of what's going to be there, but there's still going to be a change. You're going to have a fence around, which is just right now open land that we can go ahead and explore. You're going to have those deer that I have that picture of that, potentially now not going to have access because you have 8-foot-high fences around them. In addition to that, it's about 85 degrees temperature, at least I see on these panels. Birds could be frying if they're sitting on them. And then you also have, again, from my site, from ceds.org, solar, it is shown that it is about, on average, a 7% property value depreciation for all homes that are within a 1/10 of a mile from a solar farm. And so I ask you, a 1/10 of a mile, and just in case anyone doesn't know, that's 528 feet. That's about a football field and about a half. So we could visualize that to see that distance that we would be.
2 football fields, but keep going.
Okay, all right. And so my question is, I see on that you have a 10-foot setback, and then there's a proposed 25-foot setback. No one here ever spoke to the exact setback from our homes. Colorado and Massachusetts already have zoning laws in place. 500 feet is the minimum distance to residential homes. And all new development is 3 kilometers.
We're not governed by those states,
Absolutely, I know.
obviously. So we're clear, so the record is clear on this. What is the specific setback?
Justin, do you mind covering the setback?
Sure. So the required setbacks are 25, 10, and 52 feet, depending if it's the front yard, rear yard, or the residential buffer. These are all per the zoning ordinance. The proposed setbacks range in value from 40 to 78 feet. So we're not right on.
What are those numbers representing, so it's clear for the record?
Where are they?
What are those numbers representing?
It's representing the distance from the property line to the closest solar panel.
So is it 40 or 72 feet?
It ranges along the property line.
How's that a buffer?
So I feel like we need to know the exact distance to that fence. You and I are about 10 feet apart right now, sir. We're going to estimate. So visually, we're about 10 feet apart. If that fence is 10 feet and you're going to landscape in front, landscape buffer needs what? About 3-4 feet to put, landscape. So, I'm walking out in my backyard at the very end and all of a sudden there's the fence.
Or solar panel.
Well, he said solar panel up to 40 feet. But remember that fence, because on the other side of that fence is going to be that road.
Right.
That road. Gravel road.
Okay, Justin, can we let them finish, because I'm still not clear on exactly, it's from 40 to 72 feet, but if you use Jocelyn's house as an example, and you look at her backyard line, what is it, 40 feet or 72 feet?
I'll show you.
Property. Not every property has the same setback. The ordinance has a set of setbacks, and we are in excess of the required setback as prescribed by the ordinance. So the plan was designed in accordance with prescribed setbacks of the City of Nanticoke zoning ordinance, and we're proposing to exceed the requirements, meaning it's set back further than is required for uses within the zoning district.
So let's say it's 40 feet. What's the first thing that she's going to see at the back of her property? What's the first thing she's going to see?
40 feet to the fence.
It's 40 feet to the property. So at the minimum distance, it's 40 feet to the solar panel.
Okay. All right.
Let him talk.
In front of the solar panel will be a fence. That is the 8-foot-high fence that was spoken about previously. In front of that will be plantings, and that will be the buffer plantings. It's not going to be a 3 or 4 foot. We will plant 10, 15 feet so that there can be adequate distance for large mature trees to eventually grow and provide an adequate buffer.
Where is the 25-foot road going?
Oh! Going between the fence and the buffer.
And your house.
The buffer would be.
Between the fence and the buffer, or is the road on the outside of the fence or on the inside of the fence?
On the outside of the fence.
So we have more quad trails. We have more quad trails. I was under the impression the road would be inside.
Is the road that you're talking about within your fenced-in area?
Unsecure facility. That we could address in.
So, in addition, it has been shown that our homeowners insurance will go up because of this, and so we're taking a hit on our property value, and we're also taking an increase on our possible homeowners insurance. Plus, we're causing more money to cool our homes in the summer. So, if it is shown, I'm making a statement for everyone to know. If it is shown that there is a depreciation of my home value, I am prepared to go with council to Luzerne County and to request a reassessment of my home value, which would result in less taxes. So there's a plus, right? Less taxes for the city. Like I said, I haven't slept, and I haven't slept in about a month now, and the mental health aspect is the one thing that no one here has mentioned. We have a fantastic community. I feel as though that we are a little gem in Nanticoke that people don't know about. Exactly. And the thought of looking out on this, and again, I know this technology, and I appreciate this technology, but to take away my place of solace when I come home and where I de-stress, to look at these and possibly listen to that, because that's a solar inverter in Florida. And you 100% guarantee that I am not going to hear that every morning at 7 o'clock over my coffee. Gentlemen and ladies, I'm going to yield my time in a moment, but I just want to say thank you for this. Many of you I voted for. I supported you when you ran. Joe, I signed your petition to get on council. We sat at the Nanticoke basketball game watching our kids play. Mark, I voted for Leslie, so sorry, but again, I had confidence in, Leslie, and I have confidence in you doing the right thing. Kenny, you have an excellent track record with our school board, everything you've done. My kids go there, graduates of Nanticoke. I wouldn't have voted for you guys if I didn't believe in you to do the right thing for us in the community. And I'm asking you now to think about us. You know where we live, you know what this property is, and in a time that everything else is turmoil, we have a great community, and I've gotten to know so many of I think the only positive out of this is I've gotten to know so many of my my fellow neighbors now that I didn't know before, and I think we're even tighter now than we were before. But I ask you guys, do the right thing for us, please.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Brian,
In case she needed extra time, that was me.
Okay. So you concur with her testimony? Jamie Walsh. Is Jamie Walsh here? Sir, I have your name as Jamiewalsh, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And your address is 101-201 Union Street?
I'm here to speak on behalf of my mom who lives right here on Union Street. June Littleford and my stepfather Lee Littleford.
Okay.
They're in their 80s, so they just have some questions that they wanted to answer
to that.
If it's public comment on behalf of parents, no objection, just same qualification.
All right, just have you be sworn, sir.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes. Just a few questions. The first question being, who benefits from the solar output, and where does it go? Can someone explain that a little bit in detail?
I don't know the level of detail, but I'll give my best. The power that we're going to generate is going to go back to the local utility, UGI. Where they send it beyond that, I can't tell you. Where it's going to go. It may go to the city of Nanticoke. It may go to the city. It may go to Luzerne County. It may get the lottery tomorrow too. It goes back into and it strengthens our power grid. So incremental power into the grid, more diverse sources of power in general is better for the grid.
Okay, and is there any savings for the residents of Nanticoke, or can you not?
This will not impact your. Say no. This will not impact your. This will not impact your power bill. It will not. It will not go up. It will not go down. There any cost for upgrade to the local grid for us to connect to it? There are costs that will be incurred by us. So they will be then owned by the utility, but they will be incurred by us. I mean,
okay.
It technically gives more assets under management to be rate-based, but it's not, which is a benefit to the utility, but it's not enough to move the needle for your power to go down.
Okay, thank you.
There is, as you ask for benefit to the community, I want to bring up taxes.
What did you say?
I said I want to bring up taxes. Okay, so we spoke earlier about, just in brevity, about taxes. Most solar companies that are coming in are just leasing the property under a long-term lease. That doesn't trigger a reevaluation of the property, and so it won't it won't trigger a reevaluation of the property. Now, Ronald Reagan said once, "Trust but verify." I can't give you exactly how much the money is going to be that we're going to pay in taxes, but the property, according to, as I understand it, according to Pennsylvania tax code, the fence will be valued, and any land that is underneath the square footage underneath the panels will be taxed as unimproved commercial land, which is higher than the existing land. Additionally, any land that is currently in clean and green, any back taxes will be paid because this will come out of clean and green. So will the tax, so taxes, he asked a question. Please afford me the opportunity to answer the question. I'm doing my very best to answer the question. A very small portion of those taxes will go to the city. A very small portion. Most of the taxes will go to the schools. Is that one full-time teacher? Is that two full-time teachers? Is that a half a teacher? I can't tell you, but it is a significant amount of a change in the tax basis. Again, it's not going to just if it's $5,000 a year to the city, it's not going to be a lot of money, but it's going to be a meaningful chunk of money to the school district without adding any more students. That's the best I can tell you as far as revenue.
Okay. Another question. I noticed on the fact sheet, the film that's on the solar panel, it does contain lead, which is a hazardous material. Can you speak to that, please?
I can. The MSDS sheet, an MSDS is a material safety data sheet, is in one of the exhibits 4.
Exhibit A7.
Exhibit A7. And just like car batteries, everybody drove a car here or walked. Your parents are close, you may have walked. There's a little bit of lead in that battery. There is a little bit of lead in each of these panels. It is not, according to the MSDS sheet, it is not considered a hazardous material.
On the MSDS sheet I looked up online, it did say it was the only part of your panels that did say hazardous was the lead that was being used in it. And based on the number of rows that you're talking about, we're talking about 400 to 600 pounds of lead throughout all of those panels when you add it all up. Now, with all these neighbors around, God forbid there is a fire. Is the fire department equipped to deal with a fire? The way this is, I mean, we were on the way here today, and I thought a tornado was coming. And a tornado could have sparked all three of these at once. What fire department could possibly handle? And all those homes would be gone. None. They would literally be gone. So my concern as well is if there is a DC arc and it is on fire, now your lead's going to be airborne, it's going to be in the water, it's going to be in the groundwater, and it's going to destroy homes. So that is the concerns that my mom and my stepfather have.
That's a valid concern. In theory, it is possible, you're right, that a tornado could come through and it could arc all through those. That's a possibility. It is a very, very low possibility. I will take at face value your 400 to 600 pounds of lead. That's less hazardous, but in over 40 acres, that's less hazardous material than in one electric car. So, as a layperson to another, you're absolutely right. That potentially could happen.
Yeah.
We're a lot more likely.
Yeah, and I would be concerned about electric cars if they were all parked like your solar panels, because they'd all be.
We're a lot more concerned about. I would be a lot more concerned about a single house than I would be about any of our solar panels. Thank you for your question.
Last two questions. Mr. Cleet, is this the first project that you worked on with Susquehanna Solar?
No, it's not.
How many projects have you worked on with them?
About 10 or 12.
About 10, all in the state of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
How much you make a year?
That's not relevant.
It is.
No, it's not.
So my question is, so you worked on about 10 of these. How many times has your company given them a bad report that you cannot put a solar industrial plant on a piece of property?
So we enter through a due diligence stage and we vet properties to ensure. There have been several properties that they have brought to us that aren't adequate. They aren't adequate with slopes and they aren't adequate with the area itself. So, and any ones that we have worked on have moved forward. Yes.
That wasn't the question.
And you said you did not walk these properties? You did not walk them?
This one currently no.
Okay. So
we did. I personally did not. We did have a member from my office walk the property. Yes.
Okay, and because my concern with, again, if you were giving Susquehanna Solar as a consultant, as a civil engineer, and you were giving them bad recommendations constantly, they probably wouldn't continue to hire you. You understand what I'm getting at? If you were going to put 10 solar industrial plants in Pennsylvania and you used a different civil engineer each time, I feel like at least the due diligence of the city should be to hire their independent civil engineer to really come back and.
Jim, Kascowicz.
leave in like 10 minutes?
What are you doing now?
Oh, we don't want to bend. City council only.
What? Yeah.
Sir, I'm going to spell your name if I can read this correctly. It's Kasszowicz, is that correct? And you're at 1572 Hanover Street? Be sworn in, please.
I do.
Okay, sir, you can proceed.
I don't have any questions. I have a statement. And I was speaking to a person that I know very well last night, a good friend of mine. And when I got off the phone with him, I complain about everybody else. I was on the phone last night, and I was talking to a good friend of mine. And we discussed this, and he asked me where we stand. And I said, I don't know until tonight's meeting. So I drew up this little statement that I'm going to read to the public. And I hope everybody hears. If this actually happens, it will be the end of a perfect neighborhood. We've been there for 45 years. We watch kids grow. We have parties together. We attend weddings together. We help each other out. We cry when we have to cry for our neighbors. Everyone there has next to perfect homes. The yards are just like in a magazine. We take care of it. But can you imagine if they get their way and have this farm? Now we're going to have an 8-foot fence, probably, and I don't know if you said it, barbed wire on the top.
It's not contemplated, no.
It's not.
If after discussion with the city, they tell us to change what is proposed, we will. But what we have contemplated today does not have barbed wire on it.
Okay. Everyone has an ex-perfect homes. Never once did we ever call the police for any kind of occurrence that we had down there. We have a civilized neighborhood. Now, if you put an 8-foot fence around your property, it's going to devaluate our property right then and there. We've been there for 45 years. We take pride in our community. And I don't think there's anyone here that wants this in our backyard. So what I'm saying, I'm not going to read it anymore. We inherited all the game animals all from the warehouses that we have no say in, not one say about those warehouses. They just built them without our public feedback. So when they built those warehouses, they forced all the animals into our neighborhood. Don't get me wrong, we love them there. We think that's the best thing we can have. We got deer, we got bear, we got raccoons, we got squirrels, rabbits, everything. You get up in the morning and you look out the window and there's a deer or a bear standing out there. And we like that. We like that. What are you guys going to do with the animals? What are you going to do with all the game? You're going to fence them in so they don't have any place to go. If you do this, they're dead. They're dead. Unless you guys relocate them, and I know you're not going to do that. Don't do it. And it's up to our city council, and I pray to God that they're with our citizens of this town. Thank you very much.
All right, Gene, Malearezzy.
It's McCarchick.
Gene McCarchick?
I'm passing because my question was answered.
Okay, thank you, Gene. Walter Pavelitz, is Walter here? Walter. Walter, are you ready?
Yes.
Your last name is Pavelitz,
That's correct.
and you're at 1500 Kelfield Drive, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If you could be sworn, please, by the stenographer. Turn around right here, Walter.
Right here, right now. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
You proceed, Mr. Pavelitz.
Okay, as far as the solar farms, now we you just talked about before, that's Susquehanna Solar, that the solar panels themselves are going to be around 40 feet from our property, correct?
The least distance was 40 feet.
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 40 feet would be about from here to the windows. Okay, that's about 40 feet. Just to give you an idea of, how close that is. Okay, now my question is for Susquehanna Solar, what type of fire suppression system are you going to have in place to protect us on that solar farm?
It is not going to have, because the code does not require a...
Forget it.
Okay. You're not going to have nothing like fire trace or anything like that to suppress the fire? Nothing?
We are going to follow all state, federal, and local laws.
A yes or a no?
I can't be more clear. We are going to follow all state and federal and local laws. The state, any law that is required by the state of Pennsylvania, we're going to follow.
Okay, the state of Pennsylvania. I hate to ask this question in this manner, but is that why you are coming to Pennsylvania? Because we don't have those laws right yet passed? It's very attractive. It's very attractive. Would you answer that question, please?
That is not why we were coming to Pennsylvania.
Now, another question I have, okay? Why would you want to build a solar farm that close when you could go into the industrial zone where you belong? I don't get it.
This property was for sale for a period of time.
Yeah.
It is a great use. This is a better use than anything else that is contemplated for this property. It's not a...
Oh, really? Oh, you're not serious, are you? Really? Jeez. Okay. So now, what's your fire assessment plan?
That all of that is going to be addressed with the city in land development.
Go ahead.
A comprehensive plan, which will include our organization with the fire department, will be done at land development prior to the start of construction.
Okay, are you aware that in the United States in 2022 there was over 430 solar farms in the United States? Fires.
There were 3 million automobile accidents as well.
That's your answer?
You bring enough of anything to bear, and there are going to be issues.
Well, yeah. Okay, how about your inverters? Okay, now you know yourself, an inverter gets hot. If there's a spark in there or anything, and what it does, it creates a domino effect. Boom, right through all the solar panels. In a matter of minutes, toast. You know it and I know it.
If you're testifying as an expert, okay, I'm going to agree with you.
I'm not an expert, but I'm a pretty smart dude, let me tell you.
Do you have a question with regard to that?
Well, okay, with your inverters, okay, what are you going to do to stop that fire?
The inverters are UL listed. It is state-of-the-art equipment. It is the best equipment that you can use in a solar field today.
For us people here, so you're not going to have any fire suppression system in or nothing? No. Because it's not required, correct?
A 911 phone call.
The question has not been asked to me in that specific way.
Love that.
We're following best practice. We're following all of the codes and standards for how this is built. This is going to be built in the same fashion, form, and function as the solar field right next to Penn State University, right next to the rest of their college.
Right. Okay, well, all right, enough said with that. Now keep in mind, like, okay, we talked about the value of our homes being affected. Okay, roughly, just in our development alone, I can estimate probably about $2 million affecting the value of our homes just in that area. Are you going to send us a check?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Okay, I need about $28,000 on my house. Just, are you going to send me a check?
By adding the best a piece of property. I'm happy to do that, but the personal insults kind of make me feel bad.
Just answer the question.
Okay. By this use is the best use of this property. It's going to get sold. It's going to go to something. This is the best, in my opinion. In my opinion, this is the best use of this property.
It's the best for you. Absolutely.
You and I are going to disagree, but in my opinion, it is the best use of this property.
Now, okay, as far as industrial.
Do you have any other questions?
Just one more question I have, and that'll be it. Oh, I don't want to take up all the time. Okay, I mean, you answered most of my questions, but a lot of discrepancies. Okay, no, that's all I have to say. No further questions. Thank you for your time.
You want to comment, sir?
Go ahead.
The question of valuation, if you look online, you can find university studies that say both things and professional appraisals that say both ends of the universe. That say that solar has no impact, to some a positive impact, to some say no impact to a negative impact. It depends typically on the character of the neighborhood, the existing property, and what's already there. Our position, if I may, because of the location immediately adjacent to existing transformer lines and the manner in which it's buffered, it's the least impactful manner in which to develop, and I would say it's consistent with the studies that say it has a minimal to no impact on the property values.
Are you from North Carolina, your company?
No.
No? Or
No, I'm a Pennsylvania attorney, sir.
okay, no, where's the company from? North Carolina?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Well, I know North Carolina, I believe, has a 5.8 as far as affecting the house properties, but I don't know exactly what yours would be. Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Morales.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break so Kim can take her rest. I have two other people that signed in, Joseph, W-A-I-T-E-R. Waiter. You still wish to be heard, sir?
Not really. Jocelyn's presentation basically covered everything.
Okay.
Any question I might have asked.
So you're good then?
Yes, sir.
And then Dave, G-U-Z-O-F. Joe? No, we're not gonna, Joe. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Dave, we're taking a break. I just want to know if you still want to be heard.
I can't hear you like the rest of the meeting.
Sir, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Do you still wish to be heard?
Absolutely.
Okay, and you'll be number one when we resume. 10 minutes.
10 minutes. The stenographer got to get caught up.
Does anyone else wish to be heard that has not already signed up?
Can I try out this microphone? Does this microphone work?
I guess it does. So there's a proper distance. You keep the microphone so that everybody can hear you when you're talking about an immense amount of information like we were expected to divulge here. Come on. I mean, if you're hearing every third word and I got to force myself, you gentlemen, to understand what you're saying, wait a minute.
All right, sir.
So I'll come back.
Who else?
But I had to say that. I'm not going to need to.
All right, thank you. Sir, you wish to be heard? What's your name?
Trevor McDonough.
Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, let's take a 10-minute break.